Ma'am, we are live now. Please start.
A very good afternoon to all of you. I am architect Tanya Verma, Associate Professor at Sushant School of Art and Architecture, Gurgaon, Sushant University, moderator for today's session. School of Art and Architecture, Sushant University has organized a 3-day faculty development program titled Assessing Architecture. I extend a warm welcome to all of you to the day 3 of this session. Today's session is titled as The Larger Picture. For today's session, we have eminent panelists, respected Vice Chancellor Sushant University, Dr. D.N.S. Kumar, Professor Anil Yadav, Controller of Examination, Sushant University, Dr. Jafar Khan, Director, School of Architecture and Planning, Vellore Institute of Technology, VIT, Professor Mark Warner, Visiting Professor, School of Art and Architecture, Sushant University. It is indeed a pleasure to welcome you all to this day 3 of the Faculty Development Program organized by our school, Sushant School of Art and Architecture, Gurgaon. This Faculty Development Program is organized as a webinar series spread across 3 days starting 18th Feb and culminating today, 20th of February, with 3 thematic webinars focusing on assessing architecture. The first session on 18th discussed and focused on the process of assessment. The discussion revolved around what are we assessing, the subjective and the objective aspects that are part of this assessment. Prominent schools of architecture across India shared their views and processes, which have been an integral part of their pedagogy and the process. We have representation from CEPT Ahmedabad, School of Planning and Architecture, New Delhi, Sir J.J. School of Architecture, Mumbai, and our own Sushant School of Art and Architecture, Gurgaon. They all shared their processes and how each school has developed the system of formulating the entire assessment process in their particular schools. Also touched upon the impact on the teaching methods and how the process has devolved from there on. Day 2 deep dived into the methods of assessment, the tools devised for the assessment, be it the rubric, self and peer assessment, the dynamics of parity, and also talked about the collaborative process of assessment with students taking an active role and being a part and sharing the process of assessment along with their faculty mentors. The importance of open juries and the freedom it gives to critically look at a peer work. The final boil down to was on how to put a number to this subjective or the creative output of the studio. The importance of marks in the overall ecosystem and the larger gambit of the world in terms of student progressing for higher education and jobs. So do this number really quantifies the subjective output of the entire studio or the creative journey of the student? Today on day 3, we are looking at the larger picture when the creative schools are now a part of the larger system and under the university umbrella, along with other disciplines to share. So, without taking much of the time, I would like to introduce the schedule for today. So we have our Vice Chancellor, Dr. D.N.S. Kumar. He's going to talk about the National Education Policy 2020 and the future it holds for assessment and the vision for the university. Challenges of creative schools within the university prerogative. That is going to be addressed by Professor Anil Yadav, Controller of Examination, Sushant University. Architecture, Education and Assessment by Dr. Jafar Khan, Director and Dean, VIT Institute, Vellore. Fairness in Grading and Parity by Mark Warner, Visiting Professor, Sushant University, which will be followed by a panel discussion broadly structured around the questions of freedom to devise assessment modes within the university system, uniformity in mode of grading among disciplines and its implication, a global outlook in education and assessment, open house with question and answers from the attendees, and then we can wrap up the session. So this is how the flow of the afternoon is going to be. So progressing into the afternoon, I want to introduce our first panelist, Professor Anil Yadav, Controller of Examinations, Sushant University. Anil Yadav earned his MPhil from Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. Mr. Yadav has research and administrative experience of 30 years and has several publications in international journals to his credit. He is the Controller of Examination at Sushant University, with additional responsibility as Director Academic Affairs and Quality Assurance. Before joining Sushant University, he was the Registrar of Cordia Group of Institutions. He was the Founder, Registrar and Controller of Examination at G.D. Goenka World Institute from 2019 to 2015. Prior to that, he was the Founder, Registrar at Institute for International Management and Technology, IIMT, from 2000 to 2009. Before IIMT, he was at the National Institute of Public Finance and Policy, which is the think tank of the Ministry of Finance, Government of India. He also maintains a travel blog. He's by the name Climber and Explorer, which has been rated among the top travel blogs of India and has also been listed in the best travel blog directory. Request Mr. Anil Yadav to share your opening thoughts on challenges of creative school within the university system. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Tanya. Good afternoon, everyone. The broader challenges as far as the assessments are concerned, here we are talking if, for example, architecture was a school which is independent and not part of the overall university system, then the challenges are of a different nature. But when we are talking about architecture as one of the schools among, say, for example, 8 schools as an example within the Sushant University, then the kind of challenges that are there, specifically, for example, when we look at the CBCS pattern, which University Grants Commission recommends, the choice-based credit system, where the students are required to take, say, professional electives, they are required to take open electives, they are required to take skill enhancement courses, which are not part of, say, the architecture school, but are offered elsewhere. It could be the design school, it could be the planning school, it could be the engineering school, law school. So that leads to challenges wherein if the regulations are different. To give you an example, the architecture school has the regulation of a split of 50 marks for the internal, 50 for the external. This is related to B.Arch and M.Arch, whereas all other programs of the university have a split of 40-60. So how does one take programs from other schools and vice versa? Because the grading, the internal split is different. Likewise, the pass percentage also varies in the architecture school vis-a-vis the other schools. The pass percentage in the architecture school is 50% pass, whereas for other schools, it's 40% pass for passing the subject overall. Another variation is that in the architecture programs, both B.Arch and M.Arch, you need to have cleared your internal with 50% marks in order to take the external, else you are debarred from taking the exam. Yes, I am aware in 2020 batch, we are changing that regulation. But again, this same regulation is not there in the other schools. So when architecture students want to take a module or a subject, say from design school has 40-60 split and pass at 40, whereas the architecture school that is not there. So how do you offer that? It leads to complications. Likewise, there are courses like transdisciplinary learning courses, which are offered as a bouquet of university. There also the requirements are different. So what happens if an architecture student wants to take those courses, whereas on your assessment pattern, it says 50 is pass, for that subject 40 is pass. The split is also different. So these are the kind of challenges that are there in a university system. At the architecture school been running in silo, then yes, of course, these problems are not of that nature. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and how I can understand it must be difficult to maintain a level of parity. But yes, we are bounded by these rules and we are in the university system.
Probably another point
Yes,
point that I forgot is the technology aspect of it. When we offer the programs, we are using the technology, TCS-IN, for example, at Sushant University. More number of regulations, more complex it becomes on the ERP. It becomes difficult to manage. If at the university level, all regulations are the same, it's easier for the ERP to be handled.
Yes, the systemic.
I can imagine that. Imagine that is a problem.
So now I would like to introduce our next panelist of the afternoon, Dr. Jafar Khan, Director Dean at School of Planning and Architecture, VIT. Dr. Jafar is a gold medalist winner in architecture from the University of Madras in 1983. He holds a postgraduate qualification, MSc Architecture, specializing in environmental design from Bartlett School of Architecture and Planning, UCL. He obtained his PhD from RMIT University, Melbourne, Australia. He was the founder, professor, and director of Midas Marg Institute of Design and Architecture, Swarn Bhumi, Chennai, affiliated to Anna University, where he established a unique architectural pedagogy, making this school a trailblazer within a short period of time. He is a member of some of the world's most prestigious professional bodies, including the Royal Institute of British Architects, RIBA, in the UK, Fellow of the Royal Society of Arts in UK, and the Royal Australian Institute of Architects also. He presently lives in New Zealand and India. He is a registered architect in New Zealand and India, has studio undertaking projects in both the countries. Presently, he heads the School of Architecture at VIT, Institute of Eminence, and as the Director and Dean of the Architecture Department. He has been closely working with the Chartered Institute of Architectural Technologists, CIAT UK, and is keen on developing a robust architectural program with the inclusion of technology, particularly for India. Over to you, sir. Please, would like to have your opening comments on architectural education and the process of assessment.
Thank you very much, Tanaya, for giving that introduction. I hope you guys can hear me well.
Yes.
Audible enough. And first of all, thank you for giving me the most toughest topic, that is architectural education and assessment, which I hate the second part of it. I love the first part of it, which is the architectural education. That's a job I do now, but it's a tough job, you know. So I've always been asking questions: can you really teach? And I know I have no answer for it. I remember Frank Lloyd Wright once was asked to define architecture. I keep telling this. Many of these participants might have heard this from me. So define what is architecture. So you know Frank Lloyd Wright. I don't need to introduce him. He said, architecture is, and he stopped there. So there's no definition for architecture, then where is the education for architecture? Now, that's very contradictory, isn't it? That's controversial as well as contradictory. So I have had a tremendous practice for 35 years. I continue to do smaller projects now. And I've been into hardcore teaching for the past 15 years. I have found it very difficult to teach this subject. What to teach, when to teach, how to teach, and what would be the future of these kids who learn from us. Now, that's why this educating architecture becomes very, very tough job. More than that, my international experience in teaching in New Zealand, Australia, UK, as well as the Middle East, I can tell you the assessment is more difficult than teaching the subject itself. I remember going to one of the schools for a thesis evaluation, another project capstone evaluation, and the internal faculty told me that one particular student has to fail. I said, why? Because he didn't do any work. Okay. I went and had a look at his drawings. I've never seen such a wonderful drawings ever in my life. And the entire thesis project he did in just 2 sheets. He did a freehand drawing in pencil on craft paper. You know craft paper? Now you won't believe me, I gave him 95 marks. And that was the last time that school invited me for any assessment. So you see, the schools around the world have established their own system. In the last 4 years, I worked in an American system, University of Colorado, Denver. We adopted their system of education at one of the universities in Saudi Arabia. The system is based on the compliance with NAB. You know about the NAB body, which is the educational and accreditation body in the US. And they do have a lot of system built in that. Now, even that system has got a process that is. So having gone through all this, I found that the process is missing in many of the schools in India. And I came back to India in September. So it's just about hardly 4 or 5 months now. When I saw what is happening in my school, I said, we need to establish a system. First task I took was educating the teachers. So more than educating the students, it was educating the teachers that was essential for me. I have to tell you that we as teachers lose control of ourselves, and we forget that we have to provide the pastoral care to the students who believe in us, who join this course, and become completely disillusioned at the middle of the course. And I've seen students just, they don't bother to continue further. So there's some problem in this education system, and there's some problem in our assessment system. I'm still experimenting, teaching architecture. I'm learning myself. I learn a lot from my students. I love their work. I motivate them. I enhance their capabilities. I love them. At the same time, I try to motivate, elevate the spirits of my teachers. But at the same time, I have to follow a system wherein I work in a university which is engineering dominated. VIT is famous for its technology. The other day, my chancellor, Dr. G. Viswanathan, spoke my heart at the Senate meeting. He said, the non-technology courses have to be treated very differently. They are mostly left out in an engineering system, and it's time that we gave concentration to them, nurture them. He spoke my heart. I fell in love with this man. Now, how could we do that? Now, he's given me that opportunity. Now the struggle would continue for me to establish my autonomy within the engineering setup. So this autonomy is absolutely required, and the Council of Architecture in India is a big savior in this. I know people have so many impressions about Council of Architecture, but I think the Architects Act and the rules that followed after 1972 are wonderful, and they are so strong in favor of having an architecture goal of independent thinking, and they are very flexible in that. So my struggle continues. You may not find full answers to architecture education and assessment, but I can't help. That's what it is. But I keep exploring. I look forward for this discussion. Thank you.
Tanya, you're on mute.
The perils of online system. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Jafar.
So many times I talk to students and to realize
Yes.
after 2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you, Dr. Jafar. And that's quite a insight into education that you shared, that it's a task to educate the teachers as well and make them tuned to assessing architecture. We are all in this process learning, and we are looking forward for having a discussion here on. So I would like to invite our next panelist for the afternoon, Mark Warner, visiting Professor Sushant School of Art and Architecture, Gurgaon. Graduated in architecture from Maharaja Sayaji Rao University, Baroda in 1975. Worked in the field of architecture, interior architecture, landscaping, furniture design, graphic design, architectural illustrations, and a vivid amateur photographer as well. Started teaching in 1990 at TVB School of Habitat Studies in New Delhi. Has taught at various architectural schools, including School of Architecture, School of Planning and Architecture, New Delhi, University School of Architecture and Planning, USAP, Vastukala Academy in Delhi, as well as the National Institute of Fashion Technology and Pearl Academy. Been associated with Sushant School of Art and Architecture since 2014 as visiting faculty and professor design chair, and also the track director for architectural design. I request Professor Mark to please share his thoughts on, he's one of, I'll say, he's the father for starting the rubric at our school, and lots of faculty development happens along when we all are teaching with him. I'm fortunate enough to be getting the opportunity to share the studio space, and it's a lot of learning experience that I have with Mark. So I like Mark to share his thoughts on fairness in grading and the parity. Over to you, Mark.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Tanya. Okay, my story about fairness and parity starts in 2014 when I joined Sushant. At that time, our Dean Rupinder called me in, and that was the first year where Sushant got 160 students into the first year. And the Dean Rupinder thing was that he says, I want a unit. So with a 1:10 ratio, we had 160 students and 16 teachers. So, and what we did was that 160 students divided into 4 sections of about 40 each. And what happened was that we assigned each teacher to 10 students. And broadly following the syllabus and curriculum, each unit went off on their own, led by the faculty according to the direction that they wanted to take. It was a wonderful experiment. There were very, very innovative approaches to teaching the same syllabus The students had a very intense relationship with their faculty because there was just 1:10. The students were allowed to talk to other faculty members if they wanted to. We had cross reviews, and so there was this huge circus happening in this thing, which was really wonderful. And the students were, exposed to so many different ways of thinking about architecture, which I thought was a very, very enriching thing. And then finally, it came down to grades, and we had to submit our grades. And since there were 16 teachers grading in, different ways, we had this problem of parity. And we solved it in one way. We did a statistical method. We took the mean average grade that was given, and compared each faculty's grading according to that mean. And what we did was that we sort of looked at the behavior of the faculty grading, as to whether they were grading high or whether they were grading low. And accordingly, we made the adjustments. And this was quite open. The students were told exactly what the process was and what they were graded by their faculty and what the adjustment was and what their final grade was. I think they were quite happy with it because they really understood that an honest effort was made to give parity, and they understood the system behind it, and I think they were very happy about it. We have had no complaints about this, and we continue to do that to this date. In fact, now our faculties have worked so close to each other. Now we actually know exactly how to grade in a collaborative way, and the variations in grading are now very low in Sushant in the unit systems. We've done the unit systems in the first year, and we've done it in the third year, and I think the system follows through in all the other years as well. So that was where I started my great concern about parity and fairness. Professor Yar, what do you think of
that? When you joined in 2014, it used to be a relative grading system. So the relative grading system has its own advantages, yes, definitely. Yeah. But 2015 onwards, we have moved to absolute grading based on the recommendations of the UGC.
Yeah.
So in the relative grading system, all that very highs and very lows can be taken care of very easily.
Yeah. So we had this statistical method, which I thought was, which can be actually refined to quite, I think, if you get a good statistician into the picture.
Yes, of course.
I think it can be refined to a very high degree as to how to get parity and refinement.
So I would like to interrupt. Dr. DNS Kumar, Vice Chancellor, Sushant University, has just joined in. So I would welcome, sir. Welcome to the third day session of the Faculty Development Program.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So just to introduce Dr. DNS Kumar, Vice Chancellor, Sushant University. Dr. Kumar, a doctorate and an erudite scholar with an experience of 29 years, is currently serving as the Vice Chancellor of Sushant University. Rendering his expertise to students, he has worked as a professor of finance and chartered to young talent by mentoring and teaching them various subjects, including strategic cost management, corporate finance, risk assessment management, and valuation of companies. He is a master analyst in financial forensics and has pursued his specialization in valuation of companies, bankruptcy and liquidation, and reorganization. He has been conferred with various awards and recognition, such as Bharatiya Rashtriya Vocational Excellence Award by Sri Lakshmi Institute for Women and Rural Development, Dharwad, India in 2007, Mohammad Yunus Economic Development Award by Rural Development Organization, Belgaum in 2006. He has eminent writer for Institutes of Management Accountant USA, regularly administers webinar on various contemporary topics of finance, valuation, forensic finance on behalf of the Consultancy Training Institute USA. Leading his knowledge and finesse to several big names, Dr. Kumar has had an experience of working for CMR Institute of Management and Technology, Bangalore as director, Alliance Business School, Bangalore as Associate Dean and Academic Administration, Institute for Finance and International Management, Bangalore as Director and Professor of Finance, CU Academic Staff College as Chairman, and Christ University, Bangalore as Director, Research and Professor of Finance. I would request Dr. DNS Kumar, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Sushant University, to share his views on the National Education Policy 2020 and further on what opportunities it gives for assessment and the flexibility it offers to the university. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Professor Tanya Verma.
Thank you.
Good afternoon to everybody. It's my pleasure to be part of this 3 days exercise in understanding the dynamics involved in architecture, education, profession, and also how best we can bring in national education policy, which has recently come. Well, talking about national education policy, a document which was submitted under the chairmanship of Dr. Kasturi Ranjan, and fortunately, a university was blessed to honor him, recognizing his contribution in the field of science as well as education, an honorary PhD during our 5th convocation. Well, national education policy is looking not from a theoretical base of education. National education policy has thrown open lots of avenues, opportunities, not only for the learners, but also the educators and practitioners. What I'm seeing in the market, the education sector is getting disrupted. The people who were passive in participating in the education disruption are coming forward and venturing into the small setups of their own to bring a true disruption in education. I don't know whether I have to call it as a good move or otherwise move, because when that move get strengthened more and more, I have an apprehension how to run the educational institutions. What I mean is, I am able to notice, I interacted with few people who were good professors in IITs, IIMs, and otherwise some of the institutions. The call which has to be taken by all of us, they all are leaving the institutions and starting their own small setup in order to bring the new applied courses. That is a good move for students, but that may go as an otherwise move for educational institution. Right. Now, the modalities of executing the national education policy, UGC government is working out. Now, how best we are going to take care of such kind of, otherwise moves which are happening in the market has to be understood. That is one part of it. The second part of it is when it comes to research, very specifically, the document speaks about 3 aspects of research: basic research, applied research, and transformational research in the form of transition that has to happen. Up till now, we have seen lots of research, not comparable with the foreign countries, Western countries, but India also has done some amount of research. But most of the research has been not used. I mean, it's not applied. If it is a community or socio-economic oriented research, such a research has been not used. If it is a scientific research, hardly such research has gone to corporates to apply that research, maybe in the process of execution, or in the process of bringing out the new products or changing the processes. I mean, the research has become a basic research, but the second level of research, second level and the third level of research, which a document has thrown open to us, we need to do a lot of work in that. That is applied research and transition in the research that has to happen. Unless and until we look into socio-economic, political, industrial, communal issues, problems, and do a research on such areas, that research is of no use. That will be another feather to the professor's CV and another document in the institution's library. We all educational institutions have to take a call on that. It's not that we are not good at it in doing applied research. We have to identify the areas which are available for us. The same Indian who goes to Western countries or European countries, he or she does extremely good research and also take the research to the corporate. The question is why that is not happening. Now, when I say so, here it is not the responsibility of the professors only and students only in bringing such research. It is also equally the responsibility of the educational institutions to create an infrastructure which is required. Infrastructure, not physical infrastructure, but intellectual infrastructure as well as financial resources as an infrastructure which is required for research. Today, research cannot be looked from one dimension, that is from silo. It has to be multidisciplinary, it has to be interdisciplinary, then only such research can be put into practice. So when I say so, what the committee has given the thought is every research has to be an integrated, multifunctional research. Morning only, when I was addressing 30 plus professors who are getting into a research area, I was talking to them. An insight which was thrown by one of the scientists from ISRO, Dr. Alex, TK Alex. When he was addressing the researchers, he said, if you are doing a research on a company, say for example, Biocom, and if you do on a functional area, human resource development, that research and the findings and the suggestions and recommendations which you have come out, unless or until you have touched the functional areas of marketing, research and development, finance, administration, that research in silo is of no use. It becomes a rosy document for a researcher. So today the research which is requiring is integrated, multifunctional research addressed to a particular issue or a particular corporate or a community. Taking the same example, a group of researchers, maybe 5-6 people, somebody doing on finance, somebody doing on HRD, somebody doing marketing, somebody doing R&D, somebody doing administration, focusing on one company itself. When they do the research in breadth and they bring in integrated aspects, how the implications of one functional area is having on other functional area, a true suggestion or recommendation cannot be given to a company like Biocom. So that is what the committee has focused on, translational research. And that research will be of use whether it's a community-based, political-based, economic-based, social-based, or corporate-based. That is the second aspect which has been touched in the national education policy. The third aspect which is very interesting is they have articulated in terms of how programs have to be enriched in terms of bringing a multidisciplinarity into it. Even if the architecture student in the architecture area of learning, he need to learn bit about law, he need to learn bit about business management, entrepreneurship, strategic negotiations, accounting, economics of his own business. So these aspects, I believe, have been touched very less in our professional courses or otherwise courses also. Let us take another example of engineering. Lakhs of students who pass out every year from engineering colleges and universities who go to the corporate, they only know about the technology. They doesn't know anything about the business, accounting, economics, and even if the working executives, suppose they are working in Wipro and in a particular functional area, they only know about their functional area, forget their company also. And they are not aware of what is happening, what kind of trends are happening, what kind of new things are getting emerged in other competitors in the market. So therefore, business analytics also they have to understand, and which is not taught in the engineering colleges. So accounting has been not taught. In IT companies or IT enabled services, what is there? It is not much of technology, but most of it is insurance, finance, taxation, etc. And this domain knowledge, the basic domain knowledge also is missing with the students. So therefore, national education policy has asked the educational institutions and the educators as academicians, open the doors, the mind doors of the students, how best they can be multidisciplinary in learning. When that is not going to happen, it may take some time. Another opportunity which in terms of getting assessed themselves, up till now, assessment is to happen at an institutional level. But assessment can be done today by the students also. The assessment in terms of their learning. If the students are not able to learn, and if they have understood that we are not able to learn a particular subject, particular course, or a particular semester from a particular institution, under the opportunity of academic credit bank, those students can go to any other institution of their own and they can learn there and bring those credit to the academic credit bank. So what I am foreseeing, as I saw the news item 10-15 days back, Ministry of Human Resource Development is seriously deliberating on virtual universities. Today deliberation is on virtual universities. Down the line 1 or 2 years, a deliberation and execution may happen as far as virtual standalone institutions, wherein 10 acres, 15 acres or 1 acre, which is a criteria today to establish the educational institution, will not be there. Maybe Professor Mark or Jafar, Anil Yadav or myself can come together and start in 10 by 10 itself or 20 by 20 itself, one standalone institution, and wherein top-notch applied a course can be executed, and wherein students want to learn online. Right? Everyone was having apprehension when the lockdown was announced on 24th of March, how the online is going to happen. Today, most of the higher education institutions and the students learning there have got settled well. Even some of the institutions have gone to the extent of with the smart classrooms, the experiments have been shown online. Some of the professors have carried the experiments in their respective home. All right. So therefore, the academic credit bank, it will take a couple of years. When it is executed, it is going to bring a true disruption in the education. Most of the people, and this is not within India, the students have an opportunity to earn those credits from outside India also. In a way, we have already welcomed the foreign institutions. Only thing, we have to give an opportunity for the students to choose their area of learning, and which also has been kept open. Suppose a particular course requires 120 credit. You cannot say that you have to learn only architecture as a subject 120. In a multidisciplinary, the students can define. So that kind of assessment the students are going to do. So that way, in terms of assessment as such concerned, rubric is very important, wherein it gives an opportunity for students how much he has learned in terms of information, knowledge, skill, attitude formation, and competency. Unless and until all these components are not addressed in every course that we teach, student will not be able to assess themselves. And when they see that all these components they have got imbibed in the process of learning, there is no such assessment is required from the institutions. The competencies have been built. And that is what the challenge which have been thrown by Microsoft and Google before all of us. They have come out with a 6 months technology-driven programs. And they say 6 months technology-driven programs are equal to 4 years programs in educational institutions, which builds employability. When Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi speaks about Startup India, Make in India, all this is possible when we, instill that kind of confidence and competencies among our students. So that way, we are fortunate as the country is emerging with a new hopes, and the students who are studying in the educational institution are also getting that kind of hope from the economic developments which are happening, the social structures which are emerging, the political willpower which is coming to help the nation. The national education policy has come. And it has been very rightly, when I say political will, if you see the latest budget presented by Honorable Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman ji, she has touched basically on 3 aspects of economic development, and which are the pillars of economic development, very rightly: education, infrastructure, and health. Lot of policies, lot of schemes, lot of financial assistance has been earmarked for these 3 sectors. As we are on the threshold of seeing a new economy, and which they also have articulated, they want to see how the economy grows at the rate of 10.5%, which we have not seen during the last 10 years. But government is putting all kinds of effort, addressing the right, pillars of economic development. So we must, as an educational institutions, we must take this kind of initiatives coming from every corner of the economy as an opportunities, and we have to bring a true courses and true programs which are relevant to the economy, society, and industry. And such kind of opportunities are there in national education policy. I'm so happy that School of Architecture at Sushant University is deliberating for the last 3 days how the programs that we have, being a flagship program of Sushant University, can be further disrupted, so that a joy, happiness, and enjoyment and enthusiasm can be created among the learners and also academicians at university. I'm also happy and glad to note that we have a good participation, and professors from other institutions also have joined in the deliberation to strengthen it. I must profusely thank the organizers having given me this opportunity to say a few words. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Kumar. Thank you so much for your insightful words. And that gives us a full array of topics for further discussion. Dr. Kumar has also touched upon the multidisciplinary approach and how the university system gives us that opportunity of picking course from other streams. And that was one of the challenge points which Professor Anil Yadav has also touched upon, what happens when student takes up courses from the other disciplines. So those things need to be ironed out. Also about the virtual campus, that was very exciting. We have about the academic credit bank. Now that is something which the new education policy is giving us. The student can take a semester off or a year off, or even change his course of education over a period of time. So lots and lots of flexibility now in the hand of the student. Foreign institutions coming into, whether it's a good move or at least it will pull up, the Indian universities will pull up and get their action more aligned to the global system. So lots of discussion point, and now we are opening the forum for the panel discussion. So taking into the first aspect, that is coming back to assessment. So let's do from micro to the macro. So coming to assessment as a mode of grading for architecture, and how and what role does a teacher play, and how do we rationalize, or how do we put the number to the subjective aspect. And then we like to have Professor Mark and Dr. Jafar to please share their light, and then we like to get comments from Mr. Anil Yadav on how we look at it and how the university looks at this system. So over to you.
I'll take over. I'll continue from what I was talking earlier on. When we come into grading and we're talking about parity and fairness, there is also another aspect which is very important and is going to become increasingly important in our grading systems, is the legal protections to the university, so that they don't get sued by students in a court of law for not educating them well enough, or whatever it is, or being unfair or something like that. So that is another thing which we really need to look into a little more carefully. I think a lot of I don't think that happens so much in India as I think it probably does in universities or in countries abroad. Jafar, Professor Jafar, do you have any comments on that, about legal protections?
Yes, of course. There must be, but I haven't come across. Students do take the universities call, but have you read this book by very famous book where I'm forgetting the author, very famous fictional, I mean, it's a novel, Foggy Bottom Law School. And there's three friends who are misled by the private university, private law school. And they don't graduate as law graduates, and they finally go out and sue the school in a different way, and then the school is already in a mess trying to dupe so many students, and they finally get the fee back, and the story ends there. I mean, you could see a lot of stories like that, but there are quite a number of cases, because in the US and in the European system, where a student has sued the universities for unfair judgment or unfair results. I mean, in Indian law allows it. Indian law, anybody can file a case against a teacher or a university for unfair judgment of the grades, or maybe. The problem is that the universities have to develop a system. They need to maintain a system, because in a situation like this, they have to take care of it. But I think what the VC was talking was absolutely fascinating. And I think he was talking about so many things. Like, I think if the grading system follows a methodology based on Bloom's taxonomy to some extent, it takes care of the subjective aspect of critically looking at the students' capabilities and abilities. And most of the assessment systems which are developed by the American schools actually by NAB and then assisted by AIAS. There's an organization called American Institute of Architecture Students. We don't have such institute. Probably somebody in Delhi could start that. And we are starting a chapter at VIT. So we got the first national group, ad hoc group, based in VIT, where Sushant can join us, where the Architecture Institute of American Institute of Architecture Education, where the students sort of discuss and have one-to-one dialogue, not just among themselves, but with the practicing and education community. So you could see that there's an organization called American Association of Collegiate Schools of Architecture, ACSA, based in Washington, D.C. So it was the AIAS which came with this idea of studio culture, which was adopted in the year 2000. And NAB made it mandatory that every school of architecture should have what we call as a studio culture. Now you must know, and the team at the school at Sushant should, they know it, and Vibhuti is doing a wonderful job there. It's a wonderful teacher. And the studio culture forms the heart of the architecture school. And the assessment of studio performances or the student performance, both theory and theory cum lab or the studio itself, is well defined through this policy. So I found through my own research that none of the schools in India have this declared studio policy. Whereas if you go to Princeton, or if you go to Virginia Tech, or if you go to Harvard, if you go to any one of the top schools, or you go to Yale, you will see that the website of that school has a well-defined and explained studio policy document, which is available. And some of the best schools in India don't have it. We are developing one for VIT, and we are going to have a conference very soon in March in collaboration with the AIAS. I want your students and faculty to join the panel. We'll send you the link. So there is, India is still young. We got our independence in 1947. Most of the schools of architecture cropped up after 1950s. And they multiplied exponentially in the 90s. Today we have about 450 or nearly 500 schools. For whatever reasons, we have some of the highest number of schools in the world. But comparing to the population, we still need, probably somebody was telling me that we need 200,000 schools because we are 1.45 billion. Now imagine with this 500 schools and then 200,000 schools coming up. I don't know how that is going to happen. This was said by a very responsible person from a professional body. I was shocked. He was taking the statistical analysis of the population-based requirement. But in terms of assessment, like I'm sure you guys have heard about this sinusoidal curve or the bell curve. The bell curve. So the schools where I worked, where I told the University of Colorado Denver-based school, we were given a departmental curve. The school had a grading curve. It's a curve. It's an inverter. It's a bell curve. So they would say that A grades cannot go beyond 25%. and the C grade cannot go beyond 25%. The rest in between, the 50%, should be B grade. Now, it so happened I had a big argument a couple of years back. I almost lost my job. I didn't bother about it because I graded my students 75% A grade. I got into trouble, and the department of chair came to me, and she told me that she's in Canada now, but a nice lady. I hope she's not hearing this conversation. You guys are going to record this anyway. Nice lady, but she said, Jafar, you can't have 75% of A grade. We have to go for a third-party assessment. I said, fine, I'm ready to face the third party. The third party came, he saw all the documents and he saw all the drawings and the assessment method which I adopted, and he agreed to my assessment. He said 75% by Dr. Jafar is perfect. We held the results for more than 2 months. Students were really worried. So after 2 months, the result was same. 75% of the students got A grade. Now, what do you say for that? As I told you, I'm very bad at grading. I had a very terrible experience grading people. If I like something, I'll say, okay, God, I have to give him 100. You know, it's really crazy. Sometimes, as I told you, the teachers influence you to fail some students, or teachers influence you to mark them less. If you go as an assessor, you have to face their wrath. But unfortunately for me, the students become first preference, and their efforts and hard work has to be recognized. But the question is, how do you assess them? Is the bell curve the right kind of assessment? I learned my lesson hard way. My sugar levels went up because of this constant tension of giving higher grade of 75%. From the next semester onwards, I learned my lesson. I said I kept my A grades around 25%. Now, they said, Jafar, the students join your course. Most of them prefer, we had this balloting system. I don't know if you have the balloting system, faculty balloting system. So the balloting system says that I'm not supposed to take more than 16 students as per the American standards, but I used to get about 30 students. So they said, my God, you cannot have 30 students. You have to do 16 students. I can't help it. The students want me. They said they want you because you grade them very high. The next semester, I go to my studio and tell my students, look, guys, if you're looking for A grades from me, please discontinue from my studio. You know what? The students came and said, Dr. Jafar, we don't want any A grade from you. We just want to be with you in your studio. And that's the feedback a faculty gets when he is really effective in understanding, giving that pastoral care, in trying to motivate students in his studio or in theory class. So as I told you, it's not about the students at all. It's about the teachers. What is the quality of teachers we have today? How were they trained? How were they motivated? What is the background of these teachers? What kind of education they had? So, do they come just for money? Or do they have interest in teaching? Not everybody can become a teacher. And take this in writing from me. Not everyone can become a teacher. Not everyone can become an architect. But you could be trained to be an architect. You could be trained to be a teacher. When Walter Gropius was asked to draft the GSD document by Joseph, by this guy who, what is his name, is the guy who picked him from London to head Harvard. He took 3 aspects of architectural education. One is design, The second one is technology. The third one is construction. Today we do all that. Professor T.N.S. Kumar was talking about interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary. Architecture education is all about multidisciplinary. It has been like that for hundreds of years, right from the day the school system or the studio system was evolved in the mid 19th century, effectively by the Beaux-Arts. Now, my question is, the problem lies, why do we have this categorization of our faculty? We have professors, we have assistant professors, we have associate professors. And if you go to AA, Architectural Association School of Architecture, I want every teacher in India to visit that school. And you go and see the head of DRL, Design Research Lab, Theospyropoulos. He doesn't put a doctor title in front of him. He doesn't put professor title in front of him. There's no professor there. There's no associate professor there. There is no assistant professor there. So I think there is a major revolution has to happen in the architectural education thing. And the NEP is a wonderful document. I think that I was so excited about NEP. The reason is that the kind of flexibility NEP provides us. Architecture in Australia and New Zealand is 3 years. They cannot still be an architect. They have to do the professional degree for 2 years, and then they prepare a portfolio of working in those countries and get the license. But India is the only country which has got the easiest way of getting a license. The day you graduate, the next day is your license. And as the VC directly said, very nicely put, we don't know the law of our profession. I'm teaching professional practice to my students. It is, first of all, so hard for me because I am teaching them how to be responsible. And how do you define this responsibility as an architecture student, as a teacher, as a professional, and as a citizen of this country? How responsible we are. So I think I gave a very long answer for Mark's question. I don't know if I had answered him, but I must tell you that very interestingly about this cropping up of Professor Mark and myself joining together starting of architecture school. I think the VC was giving an idea to us, Mark. I think probably we should do. I want to talk to you about 2016. There's a gentleman called Peter Zellner. I don't know if you heard of this. He broke out from SciArc, one of the best schools in the world, best schools in America. SciArc. And he started his own school called as Free School of Architecture, FSA. Now you can Google and find out about that school. That's an interesting thing that happened about 5 or 6 years back. And thanks to the pandemic, to some extent, we are, of course, hurt with that pandemic, but this pandemic has made us, it has made us to research and take different kind of pathways. So the online learning has been a fascinating experience. And that is in addition to the new NEP 2020, which has come as a big boon to Indian education. It might be not be a boon for many, but it will definitely be a boon for many of the students who have a chance to break out even in first year if they want to. They can break out to third year. You know, when I did architecture, it was 6 years course, 5 years at the school and 1 year as a practical training. In third year, we were given a certificate of intermediate architecture. I don't know, Mark, if he had that because he's more senior to me. I graduated in 1983, so he is 75. He's about more than 8 years senior to me. So if I really wanted to get out, this was part of University of Madras. So in third year, I could go out, work, come back after 2 years, complete my degree. So this was already there. Breaking away at third year level, it was already existing. The NEP is nothing but going back to that system. But somewhere down the line, we completely lost in our own journey. to achieve standards of our education. Today, we want to achieve QS ranking. Today, we want to be in the ranking system. It's not about ranking at all. It's all about human beings. It's all about people. Architecture education is all about people. Why are we not bothered about people? Why are we not bothered about these young minds who are the future of this country, future of this world? Now you know Blue One and SpaceX, they already planned colonies in Mars. In next 25 years, you will see people settling down there. And this is 100% true. And you have Virgin Galactic, which is, he's going to start traveling to space just like that. And Elon Musk, who is already set his footprint in India, which is Tesla cars. He's got this Falcon machine which can take you in no time to space and then return back. So every 15 days he's launching Starlink, satellites. So the future is more open, Mark, and that I think future is absolutely fascinating. I'm a lover of technology. I'm a lover of multidisciplinary learning. The only thing is that we have to nurture them, and grading or assessment is something which is a very, very tiring process. So I think we have to think beyond this grading and assessment and look at how we can educate the minds. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jafar. That was very, very insightful. Mark, you want to add?
Well, I'm with Jafar over there, as I hate grading too, and I try and pass it off to others as much as I can.
So I'd like Professor Anil Yadav to speak on it, because I think... Yes, please.
Professor, we are talking about such a mixture of things about how we can go interdisciplinary and how we can change the course midway and things like that. How would, Professor Yadav, how would that impact you as an administrator of our exam system?
No, it's challenge, but it's a good challenge. So it's not as if as per the NEP, students do move out after, say, completing 1 year, getting a certificate, or 2 years, getting a diploma, and then they decide later on to come back. Of course, the challenges would be, it's right now, most things are on paper. How it actually comes to practice. For example, it's easy to say that somebody has done 1 year and moves to another institution. In India, you have to look at the demand and supply. You want to, you have completed, say, 1 year from Sushant, and you want to move to another institution. That institution needs to have a vacancy for you to be taken in. So all those factors, yes, will come into play. Also, another point that you had said earlier, Mark, was whether students going to the court. So that scenario is not there in India, but yes, the options available to the students are limited in the Indian aspect. They do have a process of rechecking, re-evaluation, which doesn't sometimes satisfy the student at all. What probably the institutions need to move to is a proper moderation system of the answer scripts. We have some moderation, but we need to move further. For example, most British institutions, their moderation system is that if the first marker has done the marking, then a sample of all A grades, all F grades, a 10% sample of all other grades are sent to another marker for marking. And then a discussion happens between the two. And then a mark is decided upon whether the marks are at the level that is required, or they need to be brought up or to be brought down. That sort of moderation system is lacking in India. So probably for the students to be satisfied that their marking is justified, probably the institutions probably need to move to that sort of a system.
And also, I think the challenge is for subjective courses of juries where it is that day, that event, the mood, the kind of mood the external examiner is in, or the mood of the student, or the context setting of that particular day. So any light on that? Mark, you wanted to say something?
No, yeah, that's what I'm saying. No, there is a certain subjective thing, especially in the design field. So that is where our whole conversation started, actually, about rubrics and things like that. And I think that, you know, really it also it ties down to the value system follow in our university, and it's not just the learning that has been achieved, but as the value also been achieved by the university, which the university holds, that or the School of Architecture holds, that these are the values that we want our student to graduate with. But that's, I think, another longer conversation somewhere else. I mean,
I just wanted to, okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Raj. Go ahead.
Yeah, please, sir.
I just wanted to bring to the panel's attention, in 1958, how many of you guys know Richard Rogers? How many of you guys know Richard Rogers? The guy who did Pompidou Center, the Lloyd's Bank in London? You might have seen Pompidou Center in Paris. He's the most iconic architect God has ever created, according to me, in high technology. I love him. He was supposed to take over Bartlett when I was a student there, but he never did. In 1958, the AS school issues a report, which is in public domain. It says his designs, he says that he has a genuine interest in and a feeling for architecture, but sorely lacks the intellectual equipment to translate these feelings into sound building. This is Richard Rogers. My dear Richard, this is Richard Rogers. His designs will continue to suffer while his drawings is so bad. His method of work so chaotic, and his critical judgment are inarticulate. Now, this is the impression of AA in 1958 on Richard Rogers, the most iconic architect I have ever met, the most respected. Now, just tell me, where is your assessment? When I joined first year, my professor told me I'm not fit for architecture. All right, I haven't even done one, there was no semester. I haven't even done my half-yearly or quarterly exams. My artist teacher came and said, Jafar, no, they don't call me Jafar then, they used to call me Adam. One of my name is Adam. My friends know me as Adam. Adam, you are unfit to be in architecture school. I went back to my hostel, I started crying. There was another teacher from Delhi, she's now in Philadelphia. She came and said, no, Adam, you're doing fine, because I just rejected my engineering seat and my father writes a letter that I have done it on my own interest and you decided to do architecture. And this man comes and tells me you're unfit for architecture. Just imagine as a young man, how much I must be struggling. Oh. So this is where the teacher plays a very important role. One is telling me I'm unfit. The other one's telling you're doing good. Now, I went on to do my architecture, got a gold medal in architecture, university first rank, and I bagged all the prizes, won Louis Kahn Award 3 times, 80, 81, and 82, brought this prize, and I'm today one of the very few architects from that school holding the Royal Institute of British Architects chartered membership for the past 25 years. What I'm trying to tell is that what the teachers speak and how you articulate your thought process, that becomes very, 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 very important. Now, if you look at, they were talking about why do the Indian students do so well in schools abroad? I think most of you know that our an Indian-born American astrophysicist, was given a Nobel Prize in 1983. Right? Chandrasekhar. Yes, Chandrasekhar. You can Google him. So when he came to India, when Hindu was interviewing him, they asked him one question. Dr. Chandrasekhar, do you think you would have got a Nobel Prize if you continue to live in India? His answer was just simple, no. So there is something wrong in the system. I think that is where the problem is, and the new education policy, you know about the Wangchuk case, the Three Idiots movie, and this guy who sits in somewhere in the bottom of the Himalayan range, which he runs the school. His name is Wangchuk, I think. I don't know his first name. Wangchuk guy. Has he got his
Wangchuk?
Sonam Wangchuk.
Yeah.
Has he got a degree? Has he got a PhD? Has he got a master's from Yale? No. This is where we are. Today we have a small gentleman with no education running a cycle and producing power. You know, the other day I saw a video where a guy used his motorbike to cross river in India. So that is the brightness of our students. We haven't really explored that. This nation, like its resources, like its forests, like its rivers, like its deserts, like its mountains, its people are highly resourceful and the best in the world. And I can tell you, we are the best in the world. The problem is that we don't have confidence in ourselves.
Yeah.
What is the Prime Minister trying to do for the past 10 years is to instill that confidence in us. Why haven't we tried to learn from this whole program of building up confidence? When he said make in India, it's not make in India a copy. He says, come on guys, gear up. This is the land where you have everything possible. 100 rivers. Some of them are dry. That's a different story. 100 rivers. You have snow falling in the north. You have highest raining, subtropical region in Kerala. You have deserts in Rajasthan. A wonderful country this is. I think we as educational providers, we need to understand the context that we are working. And how do we become leaders? Don't think of becoming 200. Don't think of becoming 100. Don't think of becoming 500. Think of what we want, where we want to go, and what will be our future. And that way, the educational institutions really have to work where the assessment, or for that matter, the grading of the subjects are very, very different compared to the very idea of providing education.
Yes, I think the result of an education should be that our students graduate with a healthy self-confidence. If you have that, you have everything, and if you don't have that, you don't have hardly anything at all. So
make them leaders, Mark. Make them leaders.
Yeah.
So yes, that's quite charged up, and it really infuses energy and motivation. But similarly, looking from the student perspective, because towards the end, the buzz in the studio towards the end of the semester is about marks. And they want to understand, many of them are aspiring to go abroad, their SGPA, the CGPA, the ranking. How do we deal with it? Because sometimes the teacher's comment is also very, very important. The student take it to heart. There are many times when a very hardworking student has to present his work up for jury, and it doesn't go that very well at the jury side. But there are others who believe in it. And it's the same case as Dr. Jafar has put it across. But then the final grade, it all boils down to the final grade. And for the student, for his parents, sometimes the entire society, the larger ecosystem, the value, the worth of the student, sadly to say, comes to the grade. So what is your take on it? How do we get out of the system, or how do we make it more student-centric at the university level also, and also in the education system? How do we do it?
Well, give everyone A grades so they don't bother about grades.
So Dr. Anil Yadav, Professor Anil Yadav is there. He's always saying the bell curve. I've heard this so many times, and we have seen it in our system also. If it is skewed on one side, either the teacher is very lenient or the students are super brilliant. And if it is skewed the other way around, then the paper is very tough, or the teacher has not put in much effort for it. The students have not learned anything in that subject. So how do we manage that? How do we get a hold of it? Professor Jafar, you'd like to add?
Well, I think.
Okay.
Go ahead, Jafar.
Yeah,
go ahead, please.
No,
Go ahead. No, I was just thinking that. Okay, I was just thinking that the one reason why a grade is useful is that, suppose you go for a job or you want to go and get admission somewhere, it gives somebody else some way of judging you or whether to give you the job or the admission somewhere. So to that extent, it is useful, but only to that extent, I think. After you got your admission or whatever it is, it really doesn't matter. It really then depends on how you perform after that.
Okay, I'll add my personal experience. Like, I was awarded the Aga Khan Scholarship. You guys know about it?
Yes.
A very prestigious scholarship. I was awarded the Aga Khan International Scholarship in the year 1984, do my master's. Only 4 people were selected in the entire country, and I was a lucky one in 1984. I was a gold medalist, as I told you. I was a gold medalist that year, won several awards from the University of Madras. The selection panel did not see my marks, did not see my gold medal. What they saw was what I did for my NASA. NASA? It's the National Association of Students of Architecture. What I did for my Louis Kahn Award, which was instituted by Vastushilpa Foundation by none other than great B.V. Doughty, a legend. So I won that award, 3rd prize in 1980, 3rd prize in 81, and 1st prize in Delhi in 82. So when I presented my portfolio, they simply said, you're getting this scholarship just because of NASA. No, sorry, the Louis Kahn Award. Not because the grades, not because of the gold medal. You see, architecture is a different education. You cannot compare it with the other subjects, because architecture is a very comprehensive subject. There was this big architect engineer, I think Bucky Fuller. Have you heard of this? Bucky Fuller. He's an engineer, structural engineer, who was the founder of geodesic dome. Geodesic dome. So he was not an architect, but he was an engineer, and he was called comprehensivist. Why an architect is a comprehensivist? Some people say he's a jack of all trades, good for nothing. No, I would say jack of all trades, good for something. So in our architecture program, we have so many of subjects. None of the subjects make us experts in anything. So we do on building economics. We forget the moment the semester is gone. We do history of architecture. We completely forget it the very next semester. So gradings really don't matter if you want to get a job in architecture, if you want to get placement with Hafiz, or for that matter, Kukreja, or for that matter, if you want to join HTC, or what do you call that, this company called in Ahmedabad, which is doing the Parliament building, Bimal Patel's office. I mean, if you want to really join there. You don't really need marks there. You probably need the portfolio, and the way you talk, the way you express yourself. So to get a job in architecture, you don't need the grades. But for that matter, if you want to really apply abroad and study, you don't really need the grades. They do not need the grades, but your referee's recommendation matters most and your portfolio matters most. But the grades are required only for India. You have to pass your gate, you have to get your grades, you have to get the CGPA, you have to all the grades to get into IIT, or whether it's Kharagpur or Roorkee or NIT, or for that matter, Sushant has got a master's degree. Probably you need all that stuff. At some point of time, I wrote an article that we should educate art education at school level. It's coming up now. I wrote this article about 3-4 years back. Why don't we introduce art and architecture at the +2 level, at the PUC level? So in New Zealand or in Australia, they don't go by grades. They go by how you build your portfolio and the way we interview them, talk to them. So it is the grade culture which is only specific to India. That's the very unfortunate thing. That has to change. When will it change? Can the new education policy lay the foundation for this change? I'm not sure.
Professor Yadav, so your comments now that you have heard both the panelists here and their views. So as a university perspective.
Mark also started with the students want marks and the juries. After the juries, what happens? So instead of students being disappointed at the jury level and the feedback happening, then I believe more than feedback, it's feed forward that is more important, because feedback is once the assessment is over. So for that particular subject, that feedback has less meaning. So it's more should be feed forward, that what you can do better next time in another subject. So instead of feedback, the feed forward has to be more important. As a university, for the challenges that we are looking at, I would say some of the things should remain, which are at the university level, should be common. For example, on the wider side, the marking scheme, the grading scheme should remain across board so that students can choose subjects from another area. So the weightages, the internal and external weightages, the marking scheme, grading scheme, those if can remain common. And then within that, if you want to have the exam component, you want to have, whether it's jury based or other things, that sort of independence each school should have. But if you can have overall a standard that, okay, we have this split between internal and external, this is our grading scheme across university, so that students can pick and choose from whichever school they want. And it's not only architecture students choosing something from another school. Maybe you are offering some very good courses which other school students want to take. So if there is some commonality, at least in the breakup of marks, the grading scheme, etc., then it helps all students. Yes, within that, the freedom should be there based on what is the requirement. If you have studio-based learning, therefore, if you want to go towards jury exams, etc., that should be there. Nobody is suggesting that it all should be 100% theory exams only. No, it's not possible because different requirements are there. But if we have a common structure, and then students can take skill-based courses from another school, transdisciplinary learning, even your open electives and professional electives. Your students want to take something from the design school or from the planning school. They should be able to take if that commonality is there. Yes.
I
Yes,
just wanted to add a thing for Professor Yadav's expressions about criticism. We call it critics, crits.
Crits.
We call it crits, or we call it jury. In architecture, we have a jury. And now, the system of critting a particular project has to be established. There is a method how you crit a student, what you crit, when you crit, how constructive your criticism can be. So the student is not doing a perfect job. Faculty is not doing a perfect job. Critique is not doing a perfect job. Then why do we expect perfection? The imperfection is the beauty of architectural design. There should be imperfection. So constructive criticism. That is why I said we should teach the teachers. I want to run a workshop teaching the teachers. And I said, practice before you preach. Not my words. Every faculty should practice before they come to architecture school. It's like a surgeon, professor of surgery, hasn't even gone to an operation theater, but he's going to teach surgery. How is it possible? So how can an architecture faculty teach construction technology when he or herself has not even practiced, know how a foundation works? What is the Flemish bond? What is an English bond? How is an arch? Has it been constructed? Has he or she experienced doing it? No? So that practical experience is very important when you recruit your teachers, when you encourage your teachers to practice. So, like Professor Anil Yadav says that, we should form a network of Indian schools. We are working on research network of Indian schools. Your schools, VIT is formed. We want to promote through VIT, so your school are more than welcome to join us. So this is what we call as a student swap. And about faculty swap, right? So I can ask Mark to come over to VIT for a semester or two to work with us, all right? And in compensation, I can send my faculty to Sushant to work for a semester or two. So you see that cross-school learning process has to establish. And that if we network, like for example, 5 or 10 schools come together, come to an agreement, we start working on it. In Australia, this is happening. It's called ADAPT-R in research program, okay, in PhD research. We also want to focus on research. So there must be a faculty swap that's going to happen in NEP 2020 anyway. And there must be a faculty swap, or we could call it sabbaticals or whatever it is. And then, that way we can make our schools much more meaningful, and we could share our experience to the future generation of this country.
That's very insightful, sir. And yes, this has been a point of deliberations across, and slowly I think we all can move towards formalizing it within the university umbrella, how the modalities can be worked out. We have a question here, and it is addressed to Dr. Jafar. So it is from Amrita Madan, and she wants to ask your opinion on the relation between the 5-year bachelor's in architecture education and a 3-year BSc or a 4-year BTech. How does it tie up with the other fields? Do professional courses need to be treated differently from others? And what's your view? Because we are a 5-year course.
Yeah, I should tell you that this young lady, that the 5-year program is almost now nearly 80 years old. All right. This is a system which we adopted from the American way of education, modern education. People in UK, Australia, New Zealand, and many other countries have departed from this. They've established 3 years Bachelor of Architecture Studies, or they call it BAD. It's called Bachelor of Architecture Design. Now, it all depends upon how the Council of Architecture reviews this whole thing. Now, Council of Architecture is the body which protects the title of architect, and then they issue registration or license to practice. Now, believe me, Unlike any other engineering course, architecture course is the only course in technical field which is issued with a license from the government of India. Engineers don't have a license. Project managers don't have a license. Interior designers don't have a license. Product designers don't have a license. Doctors have a license. Dentists have a license. Lawyers have a license. And architects have license. So for a licensed architect, there is a process that is adopted internationally. If you go to Australia, you do 3 years bachelor degree of architecture, then you do 2 years master's professional. Then you build your profile. It takes 7 or 8 years to become a registered architect. So world over, 5 years in some way or other, in whatever permutation and combination, has been a learning process for architects to get the license to practice. So there could be one thing. So you could probably do architecture not to practice. There are many people who do architecture for just the love of it. Some of them do architecture and never complete it. And now, for example, Peter Zumthor. Have you heard of Peter Zumthor? One of the iconic architects.
Iconic.
He never even completed architecture. And there are so many examples in India I don't want to mention here. Tadao was a truck driver or a boxer. All right? Frank Lloyd Wright, for that matter, he never graduated from Wisconsin. He left the course, engineering course, halfway through. He got the gold medal of AIA, gold medal of RIBA, and most iconic architect of the 20th century ever created. So it's the license that matters. You want license to practice, and then you have the norms established by the system. It is a long process because we have an act called as an Architects Act of 1972. Nobody has that act. We have, thanks to Pilu Modi and his group of people who helped us develop this act. Today, it's the act that controls us. It's the council which takes care of our title. If it takes care of your profession, I'm not sure, but definitely it takes care of your title. So the 5-year course is almost mandatory globally if you really want to become a licensed architect. But on the contrary, or the other side of it, that everybody wants to get a license, all right? So 5-year degree has to happen because you want a license to practice.
Yes, this is a license to practice, and we are in this system. So most of the students, after their 5 years, they are applying for their license. We have an interesting comment from Vibhuti also, and she wants to say that one can be an excellent surgeon, but a poor teacher. So, so we have examples of that accord also, and yes.
You can be an excellent architect, but can be a bad teacher. But you can be a good teacher, bad architect too. And one finest example is Walter Gropius. Walter Gropius never did a single drawing in his life. Do you know that? He started this thing called as the Architecture Collaborative. It was all the people around him who worked for him. So we could say that he was not a great architect, but he was a great educator and motivator. So you could say that, it happens in all the professions.
Yes. So also taking the thread, there were lots of deliberations at the council and in the architecture fraternity as to having the intake exam as an ATA exam for architecture. Why not have an exit exam for license? Like you mentioned, there are people who don't want to practice architecture. So if somebody wants to practice architecture, should he again go through an exam? Is that something that we are looking for, or it's not a valid argument? 5-year education is good enough to be in the practice.
So Mark, are you going for it? You have to unmute.
I suppose it depends. You can practice, but I mean, what level of practice do you have? In what kind of buildings? complexity of building. I think a simple building, I'm sure you could quite easily do. I mean, generally speaking, I'm sure there are people who I mean, like Jafar said, people who have not, graduated, have gone on to have such a brilliant architectural careers. So I guess it depends individually, I guess, on a lot of, on
Like,
what kind of a
for
person.
example, we had this gentleman, Gujral, Satish Gujral.
Yes, absolutely.
So he was not even an architect. He did this Belgian embassy, which is an iconic building in Delhi. And I was told even MF Hussain did a couple of buildings in Delhi. I'm not sure he did some buildings. So if you look at this guy, Casimir Malevich, had you heard of this black square on the white, black on black and white on white, Casimir Malevich? At some point in time, he was asked to become an architect. He did do architectural project, but never got built. So if you look at Zaha, she was more than an architect, she was an excellent artist. If you go to her gallery in London, you'll see her paintings. Amazing. How did this lady do it? If you look at her Hong Kong Peak competition, the first competition she won globally in 1983, the drawing is full of art, and no one could understand it. When I saw it, I couldn't understand. I couldn't see where the building is. So it's only Zaha who can understand the drawing. And the jury did not understand what she was trying to do, and she got the first prize, but she never got to build it. That's a different story. So you see, there is something called as people who are not qualified becoming an excellent architect, and have artists who become an architect, and architects who work on architecture have done wonderful projects world over. And look at the works of Santiago Calatrava, is an engineer from Spain. Look at his work. Wonderful work, wonderful. We call him an architect, not an engineer. So do you really need that qualification to be an architect? So it's not about your BArch 5 years. It's not about your MArch. It's not about your PhD. It's all about your understanding of what architecture means to you. So if you ask the meaning of architecture, I don't have an answer for it. I'm going back to my first statement. Architecture is no, absolutely nothing. Now, if you look at Charles Correa's practice, I love this gentleman. Such a wonderful architect the nation has ever created. At the end of his career, if you look at the one which he just did, the building he did in Lisbon, listen to his conversation. He talks about nothingness. He talks about emptiness. He talks about sifra, that is zero. He talks about understanding or the misunderstanding of space. So we want the students to understand space, but not to misunderstand space. Have anybody spoken about misunderstanding space? So that is a problem. We need to define architecture before we educate them. Thank you very much.
Mark, now we are almost nearing the time, and so we like to get some closing remarks on the 3-day FDP that we did on assessing architecture. And oh my God, I'm having so many unanswered questions, or it has to go on and move to another deliberation to answer all of those, because such interesting ideas have cropped up. And each one has so much of potential to be explored. Mark, can we have your comment? You have been a thread all along.
I quite agree with you. There's so many ideas have come on. And I think when we started this webinar, I think the idea was really, it was a start of a conversation with a lot of other people, from other institutions, which we hope to carry on over the next few years, hopefully. And we have brought up very interesting issues. We have brought up a lot of interest and a lot of questions. A lot of questions have been brought forward, which I think we can now start addressing in a fruitful sort of a way. We can. There are a lot of debates to be had, a lot of arguments, a lot of agreements, a lot of things in the future. I can see now, and I think yes, I think this is the start of some very interesting conversations between all of us who have participated, and I hope we will get more people to get interested in what we have started in this with this webinar series. And yeah, and and it's also now leading up to one of the questions. This really should lead up to what does the future hold for architecture, and are we being future ready? Are we I hope the conversation goes into that field as well. We have some inklings of it. We have some thoughts have been expressed. So I would say I've really enjoyed listening to everybody very much, and I have, of course, a lot of questions also in my mind now, and it was such a delight to talk to so many people and listen to them. And Jafar, you were amazing today, I must say, and and I hope we do continue, collaborating in some way or the other in the future.
Yes.
So I think that's my take on it.
Yeah, I think Vibhuti is a wonderful leader there. I think we never had a serious conversation yet, but I think Sushant is in my mind, and I think we should come together on many things, and we can revolutionize architecture education. Definitely. I'm from the south, she's from the north, so we can bring minds together and we can explore. But the idea is that we have to depart from the convention and then explore areas of unconventional areas. There we come out with something. Then Shanti University can be a leader, and not just in India, but in the whole of the world. So where students not come from India for you, get students from the US, you get students from the UK to study here. So why we should go to the US? US students should come here. So the reason is that because we have to keep that platform open, option open, and we have to open up our thought process so that our culture is global. So we have to make it that way.
Yes, I think we live in. If I define this age in any sort of way, I would define it as the age of collaboration. The whole internet has made it, and I think we need to collaborate, and that's, I think, the way forward for all of us is to be great collaborators and to genuinely collaborate with other people and other institutions. I think this webinar has taken us one step forward in that level, in that sense. So yes, I think it was great.
Professor Yadav, your final comments on your take on how the university perspective and how do you feel dealing with the creative schools?
No, I think it has been an interesting deliberation, and I hope that based on 3 days of deliberations, we are able to make some improvement in the overall education of architecture field and the assessment part of it as well.
Yeah. Yes. So on that positive note, where the university is
just before you go.
Yes. Yeah.
I have to tell Dr. Yadav and the Vice Chancellor that architecture school needs autonomy. So you have to allow that school to grow on its own. So there should be less less control and allow the school to evolve, I'm sure. I mean, 20 years old school, it will come out wonderful. So that autonomy, never take it with the other engineering professions. Have to keep that autonomy and think about it in formulating your future proposals. Architecture is architecture and is architecture. So you got to think about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jafar. I think that's. I think you have read us very well, and you have put our thought to the university also. But we are very happy to have a synergetic atmosphere at the university, and Professor Yadav has been very kind and patient and understanding with the systems understanding the systems for the architecture school. And Dr. Vibhuti, our dean, has been quite clear and foresighted in putting newer systems. The pandemic taught us lots of things, and I think our school was the first to take up a new shift to open book assessments and redefining the entire process, how it should be done in this pandemic, rooting away from the traditional system. And we are happy the university accepted it, and I think the grading and the entire process was so fairly done, and the system really worked very well. So yes, the university and the school is working in a synergetic atmosphere. And also, I like to thank everyone for sparing your time and giving such valuable inputs for the webinar and an apt conclusion to the 3-day series. I also thank the organizing team at the school, Deepika, our dean, Dr. Vibhuti Sachdev, for conceptualizing. Mark, he has been an anchor and he has taken this thought process further. Himanshu, Sanghani, our associate dean, and the entire Sushant School faculty team who has worked together, collaborated, and benefited and brought this entire webinar series together. So thank you everyone for joining us. Have a happy evening, and the weekend is yours, so enjoy the weekend. Hope to see you all again. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you very much. Goodbye. Mark, we have to catch up.
Thank you.
All Jafar?
Mark, we have to catch up sometime.
Yes, we will. We will.
Okay, bye-bye.
I'll get you.
Bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.